Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to today's show. Today is Sunday and we are live at 11 a.m.
We hope you guys are doing well, brothers and sisters. Happy New Year for those, knowing that it's 2020. As you guys can see, I don't have my glasses on. So one of the things I realized, once it hit 2020, my visions got better.
Haha, that was a very bad joke. But yes, Happy New Year. I know we have not been live on the program for the past 2 weeks, but that's because we were actually out of town. So we do want to take this time and this moment to wish you guys all a Happy New Year. And hopefully with this new year, we'll have new barakah coming into all of our lives and having, inshallah. And, starting fresh and setting new goals and fulfilling those goals.
Definitely. And it's great to come back and and to be able to interact with every single one of you guys here. Again, I did miss the program, but then at the same time I was at a place. We were at a place where I don't think you want to ever come back here. It was just very peaceful, very beautiful. Like Lamba John mentioned earlier, we did go on a trip. Maybe we can talk a little bit about our experience. And this is our second time going there.
It is.
We went there last year, and what we're saying is that we went to Umrah last year, but we had two different locations that we stopped by. I'll let you go.
So we're actually technically having some withdrawals right now from our trip. Last year we did go to Umrah, alhamdulillah, and we went and visited both Medina and Mecca, and we spent, good 4 days in each city. And alhamdulillah, this year we had a bigger trip that lasted a bit longer, and we had the opportunity of visiting 4 different places that consisted of Turkey, Jerusalem, Medina, and Mecca. And so while it was a 12-day trip, it felt really, really short, and it felt like it went by super fast. Alhamdulillah, we're glad that we did go on this trip, even though we do wish it had lasted a bit longer, but we were always grateful for that opportunity. And so coming back from a different city always kind of causes you to feel homesick, right?
Yeah.
But we're not feeling homesick about Orange County or California. In a way, we're homesick of not being in those countries anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely. And part of the experience is always that when you do go to a country, a homeland or a motherland, where you're going to a country filled with just Muslims, your brothers and sisters, being able to see historical sites, infrastructure, the history, the rich history that those countries provide. You go there and you say, wow, this is amazing.
Well, and specifically with Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is a site where, so much history did occur, and especially focusing on Islam.
Yeah.
So many prophets, may peace be upon them, lived in Jerusalem. So much history took place with Islam, with the messages that were being spread, with the followers that were leading, in that nation. So you go to all these different sites and learn about all these stories that you used to hear about in the masjids or within your home, and now you're at those sites walking in the same place that once upon a time the prophets walked in. And I think that in itself creates so much, beauty.
It does. It definitely does. And not just that, but even when you go to these certain places, you'll realize that there's so many people out there who are traveling from different parts of the world. They're coming to visit the great masjid. As the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, there's 3 places that are very important for us Muslims. Kaaba, then you have the Prophet, peace be upon him, Masjid al-Nawawi, and then you have Masjid al-Aqsa, which is in Jerusalem, which every Muslim needs to go and they need to take a look at. Even when we were there, we saw so many Muslims out there, and a lot of people that did end up coming there, and the ones that did show up to Masjid al-Aqsa majority were tourists.
Yes,
they were tourists.
Definitely. Well, and we know because of the kind of condition currently Palestine is in, a lot of Palestinians, actually none of the Palestinians are allowed to go into Masjid al-Aqsa. They're kept, miles and miles away from the masjid, and it's very unfortunate because tourists like you and I can go in and visit, this beautiful masjid and pray there, and then citizens of Palestine who have lived there their whole life. I know we met somebody who was 18 years old, and he told us that his only dream in life was to go and visit Masjid al-Aqsa because until this point he hasn't been able to do so.
Definitely.
And so it teaches us, alhamdulillah, how blessed we are, because not everyone gets this opportunity. But at the same time, on the other hand, it's sad to see what the people of Palestine are going through.
and it was really sad to hear that. We had a young guy who was in 17, 18.
Mm-hmm.
So his father was
Our
taking
tour
us from
guide.
our tour guide from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, to go where Ibrahim alayhi salam's burial grave is. And when we went there, we got to talk to him. Got to talk to his son, and what we realized was that it wasn't just him, all the son as well, but every single Palestinian that lives there cannot visit the masjid, which is unfortunate to know,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that is their homeland. But it's been occupied in a way, and it's been so difficult for those the younger generation, where they can't go out and they can't pray at Masjid al-Aqsa. It's not even 5 minutes away. It's like
Yeah.
2-3 minutes away from their
Mm-hmm.
homes, and the guards that are standing within the haram, that's surrounding the masjid, are there with rifles, with guns, and they're not allowed to step in.
And I think that was one of the culture shocks for me, because this is the first masjid that you and I have attended where we do see such tight security at.
Yeah.
Because when you visit, the Prophet's masjid or the Kaaba, you don't see that much of a tight security where people will stop you and ask you questions, and you feel kind of intimidated because they're holding guns. But at Masjid al-Aqsa, every single entrance that leads to the masjid, you'll see 3 to 5 army members with their guns who will stop you and ask you questions such as, are you Muslim? Can you recite a Shahada? Can you recite certain surahs? And so they really test you to make sure you are Muslim. And I think that creates a lot of fear and like intimidation within the people.
It really does. It really does. And then even as Muslims going there, I think one of the things that was very surprising, it's like you go there, especially when you go to Jerusalem, and all over the place, right, at Palestine and Israel, what you realize is that every corner, there's a camera, and then you have a military,
Mm-hmm.
two military folks paired up, a guy and a girl, just for safety, security, and
Yeah, so it's a very
and intimidation
controlled
too, and
area.
controlled area too. So
Mhm.
it felt like in a way, you're being watched 24/7, and
Mhm.
that's what it was. And then at the same time, it was just sad to see and hear, and see how even the Palestinians and how they were being treated
Yeah.
in that sense.
And I think
It's very
something that
sad.
we got to experience, which, I'm very grateful for, because I think living in the U.S., while we do hear about the struggles in other nations, such as Afghanistan and Palestine and Syria, I think while we're living here and listening to these,
Yeah.
a part of us feels like, that's so sad, but this is what's happening all around the world. It's happening in our own country, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a part of us assists them, we send money, but we really minimize the political problems that are occurring in these countries. So when we went to visit Palestine and had the experience within the people and hearing people's stories, I think it really magnified the issue for us and understanding what the daily lives look like of the people of Palestine. Because we heard stories such as, people will work and they'll only get 30% of their earnings. They're not allowed to build homes on land that's like empty. If
Definitely.
they build homes, they say within 2 to 3 days, bulldozers come and will, eradicate their homes.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really sad when you're within that community and hearing their stories and realizing how forgetful you've been of them.
And it was truly very sad, and not just that, but it was just very difficult to see, right? Because you have a lot of folks, the younger generation, going to, younger generation Palestinian Muslims that are there, and they can go and they can travel safely, right? But let alone we have to face the reality that it is a war zone there,
Mm-hmm.
and it is difficult. But as Muslims, I think it becomes very challenging, and not a lot of us know of the circumstances. We do see things, here in the West, and then when we do get there, to see how the Palestinians are going, what they're going through. Yes, there's violence. There are those Palestinians who actually want to live their life in peace and harmony. They go to work and they want to just make a decent living. Even the person that was their tour guide, he even said, listen, we don't want your financial support. We just want you to know that this is our land, and we don't want to leave. That's what he
Yeah.
said. He said, we don't want to leave. And that tells you a lot. They're not there because they want anybody's money. They're not there because they want to cause harm. They're just there because that's their place. Those are their homes. Those are their lands. Not being able to live or abide by their own rules or laws just has made it very difficult for them, unfortunately, which is very sad. But what we can say to all of you guys that are watching us today is that Lambajan and myself, we videotape our tour. And so what we did was we ended up going to 4 places throughout this journey, this 12-day journey. We went to Turkey. So we will go ahead and show you guys, what we did in Turkey. We videotaped Jerusalem, Bethlehem, important sites where we went, and what was the process like. And then also Medina and Mecca, very little because we were very much busy in our own spiritual journey. So for that, we don't have too much video clips on that. But we'll go ahead and we'll put it together and then allow you guys to see our journey through our lens, so you guys are able to see that.
Yeah. But alhamdulillah, we are grateful for going, and we're really grateful for coming back as well.
Definitely.
So we are looking forward to being able to compile those videos together and showing that to you guys, so you guys can experience what we got to experience, and inshallah motivate you guys to go ahead and set out on your own Umrah trip, inshallah, very soon.
Inshallah. Yeah. So and the idea is for you guys to take a look at it and not be discouraged. Even right now today, if it was just 2020, so if God, if it was God's will, inshallah, if the possibility comes across, I'll go again to all these places. Masjid al-Aqsa, it's a must.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a process to it where when you do go and you get to Masjid al-Aqsa, there's certain procedures that are applied to you, especially when you're a guy. When you get in, they'll interrogate you, they'll ask you questions. When you get out, till the time you you step foot into the airplane, you get interrogated twice as harder and twice as much. They just try to make it difficult for you. They just try to ask questions, where you've been. So basically, again, it comes to the same topic of they're monitoring you all the time. They're trying to see you were here for what you wanted to do and nothing else.
Yeah.
Maybe that's their process like, and that's how they question folks. But other than that, it was an amazing journey. We highly recommend every single one of you to please do take the opportunity to taking the step.
Yeah.
And Lambajan, even and on her show with Freshta John, she's always mentioned and she's always said, Umrah is a beautiful process. If you guys want to do it, we highly encourage you guys to do this. We did it 2 years in a row, and inshallah we might be able to go again if it was God's will.
Yeah.
It's just a place where I've fallen in love with, which I'll definitely go to on a yearly basis.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and turn our perspective onto the topic of today's show.
Definitely.
And this is a topic that we are very passionate about because this is kind of a struggle that we see in all communities, not just in the Muslim or the Afghan community, but I think it's almost natural for people to have issues with this specific topic, and it's pertaining to not just couples. I think today we are focusing on couples, but this is an issue that can actually apply to anyone, an employee and his employer, a parent and child. So should I go ahead and express the topic, or do you want to go ahead and reveal the big surprise?
No, I mean, since you're on it, go ahead.
Okay.
Please.
So today's topic is going to be focused on the types of communication styles that we all use.
Definitely.
And so as individuals, we learn our communication styles from our environment. So whether that's your schooling, your parents, whoever you're surrounded by. And it's natural for us as humans to not have the same type of communication styles when we talk to someone else.
Yeah.
And sometimes when that happens, when we have different communication styles and they're not as, I would say, like progressive in a way and assertive, then that can cause problems in any kind of relationship that we have.
Sure.
And so Willie John and I thought it might be really important today to discuss, what are the different types of communication styles and how can we work around, issues when we have different communication styles and are not able to get our points across.
Definitely. And we wanted to discuss this topic with all of you viewers. This is something that we'll go ahead and explain, the different communication styles that you might come across and you might understand better once we discuss it and go in depth. You'll realize like, oh wow, like I'm this way, I have this kind of communication style. My husband has this kind of communication style. My wife has this kind of communication style, or even your children.
Yeah.
But we want you to be able to understand it. We want to be able to acknowledge the fact that there's different forms of communication styles, but what is the most effective form of communication style that you can use
Sure.
to have a better relationship? And that is what we want to talk about today.
Definitely.
And please, if as you can see, I have got a new look. It's nice. It's nice and bald.
Nice for him.
Nice for me. It's amazing when it's cold. It feels really cold when it comes across the sun. It gets really hot.
So the 4 communication styles that we're going to focus on today are going to be passive aggressive, and assertive.
Yes.
So I just want to remind everyone that we are live today. So if you have, a certain type of communication style that sounds familiar, or if you have any questions or want to share any of your stories about how your communication style either supports and helps your relationship, or, you're having problems in the relationship because of your communication style, please feel free to give us a call. You can be anonymous or send us a message on Facebook so we can go ahead and hear your story and answer your questions.
Definitely, and we want you to give us a call. Again, this is a great topic of discussion. You can give us a call, as you can see on the screen. Our number is there, or leave us a message on Facebook, as always, and we'll be able to answer any questions, or if there's any thoughts or feedbacks or personal experience, like Lambajan said, we'll be more than happy to assist in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So just to get started, again, basic form of communication styles, right? Communication's very important to any human being.
Right, because what is really communication meant for? What do humans use communication for?
Sure.
They use it to be able to, share information, right? So it's an exchange of information. I want to share something with you and, tell you something, and that's me communicating with you, and you want to do vice versa as well. You want to exchange information with me.
Definitely, because if I don't communicate with you in a manner where I'm not hearing you, or you're not being able to hear me, or you're not being able to understand each other, then we come across a challenge or a barrier where we won't be able to solve any problems.
Right.
We'll be able to solve problems, but just it would be either on your side you'll be able to solve the issue, but then I'll have a problem with that,
Right.
or I'll be able to solve the problem and then you'll have an issue with it. But then this is where the problem comes. You can do this, it will work for you, but eventually as time goes on, it becomes more challenging because then you have kids involved. When you have kids, it becomes very difficult, and this is why where you see a lot of parents not having a formal structure when when they have kids, because they never worked on their own personal communication.
And I like
So-
what you're saying, because you're indicating that resolution does exist in some of these communication styles, but what we see happening is when one person is the one who comes up with a resolution without checking in with their partner or their parent or anybody in your life. If you're having an issue with someone but you're creating your own resolution without checking in with that person, well, who's going to be happy with that resolution? The other person may not even agree with your
Definitely.
answer to the problem. They might go along with it. And what happens when people go along with something that they don't agree with for the sake of peace? Eventually they get tired, right? Eventually they feel resentment growing within them because, hey, you're giving me all the answers, you're coming up with all the resolutions, but I don't agree with it. And so I'm feeling very resentful now.
Definitely.
And so then that creates a problem of its own. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So I really love that you pointed
you.
that out and brought that up.
Perfect. So we'll go. See, this is part of like effective communication that my wife and I we have is
We're
that
role modeling.
we try to role model. We're not perfect. We have our disagreements, but at the same time, the importance of disagreement is that you're supposed to have it in a very healthy way, in a healthy manner, where I'm able to respect her thoughts and she's able to respect mine, and then we end up, we come across, we usually have mutual understanding of like, okay, what decisions we have to make, because at the end of the day, you have to make a decision.
Sure.
But it's okay to have different thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Or sometimes we say if two people are opposite where they can come in agreement, it's okay. Maybe you might have to sacrifice one decision, and then the opposite, the husband or wife have to sacrifice the other decision.
Sure.
But you have to work along each
Yeah.
other, right? So there's fairness.
You have to
in that sense.
compromise. You have to be able to give some and get some at the same time, but creating that balance where you're not always the person taking and you're also not always the person who's giving. So creating a balance in your relationship. So we'll go ahead and go into our first communication style and talk about what it is, because that's the topic of the day. So the first communication style that we want to focus on is the passive communication style. And usually what we see with passive communication, a good way of giving an example of a passive communication style is if, let's say we are having a disagreement, right? And you're telling me to do something, and internally I really don't want to do it. It goes against my beliefs, it goes against my opinion, my thoughts, my feelings, but I don't express that with you. I don't say, hey, Willie John, I don't agree with you, or I don't want to do this thing you're asking me to do. Let's say you're telling me to, go get up and do something, right? So even if I don't want to do it, instead of telling you that in a good way, in a healthy way, what I might do is say, oh, okay, or sure, if that's what you want me to do, I'll do that. And what happens in these communication styles is I'm being very passive. I'm not being able to trust you with expressing myself in a healthy way, right?
Yeah.
If I'm having a disagreement about something with you and you're asking me to do something I don't agree with, instead of telling you that I don't agree with you, I'm being passive and just going along with it, right?
Yeah.
And so what we see in passive communication is it makes you very miserable eventually. It makes you very resentful
Definitely.
because you feel like I can't voice my opinion. I can't express what I truly
Absolutely.
mean.
And it also shows that, it really doesn't matter that much
Yeah.
to what you're thinking. So if you were to tell me something and I don't appreciate it, or if I don't acknowledge it,
Yeah.
that means that for you individually, you would feel that, okay, I probably don't matter.
Right.
You probably don't.
And people who have the passive communication style usually feel like they don't know how to express themselves. Like that's the biggest struggle with people who have the passive communication style is they feel like I don't even know how to put my emotions, my feelings, my thoughts into words.
Yeah.
And so even that can create misunderstanding for the other person because like you said, if I'm a passive communicator and you're not, you feel like, okay, she's going along with it and there's no problems, everything's fine.
Absolutely.
But then I might act in ways that show that I'm upset, and that creates misunderstanding for us because then you'll be like, well, what's going on? You're going along with it, but now you're acting very upset.
Absolutely.
So it creates a lot of, miscommunication, misunderstanding, and like a lot of resentment.
Yes, and then at the same time, when you do those things, right? A lot of folks or a lot of partners, what they mistakenly do is that they'll go ahead and do something, and they realize that their partners are not on the same boat,
Yeah.
or they're not in agreement with them. But then either they roll their eyes or they just signal in a way
Yeah.
where that your partner is not happy with you, but then you eventually still do it, and then this becomes a pattern over time for
Yeah.
the partner that wants to do what he or she wants to do. And that isn't healthy, again, because it goes to a certain point where your partner will eventually, will get fed up one day. And then when they get fed up, this is where then they'll say something. And then when they end up saying something, then you'll have the partner who used to make those decisions or other people around them that know them,
Yeah.
oh, this person is changing. No, they're not changing. It's just that what ended up happening was that person was always patient with you, or they didn't have the in the very beginning stages of the marriage or relationship, that person didn't have the will to speak up because they didn't want to hurt or
Right.
to hurt the partner as well.
Well, and they feel like, I should just go along with the flow. I should keep the
Yeah.
peace of the situation that's at hand, right? And so what we usually see with passive, communicators is they even have a really hard time making eye contact.
Sure.
And they tend to feel like at the end of the conversation a lot is, I'm going to go with the flow, but in the conversation I feel like, nobody understands me. Like nobody understands my feelings, and I feel so misunderstood by the people, even though they're giving a different message out to the people.
Definitely, and I think it's important that from a very earlier on, a person must always take their partner's feelings and thoughts into consideration. And the reason why you want to do that is that if, let's say, a year from now, 2 years from now, people catch on to these things.
Yeah.
People external, like either family members, either it would be your brothers, your sisters, it'd either be the guy's side or the girl's side. If you're not respecting your partner, they in return will not respect your partner either. So they won't take your partner seriously,
Well, and
and
we
that
also,
will eventually hit that person the wrong way because they're
Right.
like, well, why aren't they respecting my spouse?
Yeah.
Because what they don't realize is that they have created that situation for others.
And what we have to look at is how is this passive communication style even created, right?
Yeah.
How do we become passive communicators? And some people believe it's because passive people really want to please others.
Yes.
And when we look at, this whole concept of pleasing others, what is the biggest kind of issue in there? Well, we please others because we're kind of afraid of conflict, right? We're kind of afraid that if we speak up and we have an opinion that's differing, then that's going to cause us to be left out, for us to be isolated, right? And so then there's such a big fear and anxiety of, well, I don't want to be that individual who is kept out of the circle or looked down upon. So instead of being able to express myself assertively, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go along with the flow.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's something that, the person who is a passive communicator needs to look at. When I'm keeping the peace and I'm keeping my feelings and emotions down and expressing something that I don't really mean, who's it hurting at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Is it hurting me? Is it hurting the people around me? Am I being dishonest with the people around me?
Definitely. And now and that's
Passive.
passive. Now we're going to go ahead and can we move on to the
Yes,
second one?
definitely. I think we did a pretty good job on that one.
Yeah. So number 2. Now the second thing is aggressive form of communication style. It's often appeared when someone communicates in an aggressive manner. You'll hear it, you'll see it, and not just that, but you'll also even feel it. What we mean by that is that you'll see someone that demonstrates very loudly, when they want to get their point across.
They raise their tones.
They raise their tones. They have direct eye contact. They'll try to intimidate the
Yeah.
partner. If not even, they'll try to control the others by blaming them. They try to criticize them, even threaten to attack them eventually as well.
Yeah.
So this is a form of a very aggressive form of communication styles.
Yeah.
What that occurs.
And we
as
see
well.
this a lot. Like a really good example of like the aggressive communication style that I like to point out is we see this with kids sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we see kids get really, really angry and they're like, no, I want it this way. I want it done right now. And you're like stupid and retarded for not doing it. Like they will just kind of go out and blow up and demand things, right? Very
Yeah.
aggressively. They'll start kicking and hitting. They'll raise their tone of voice. And so think of a kid who has these kind of tantrums, and that's what you can imagine an aggressive communicator to be like. And so with adults, we may not see it that
No,
extreme.
but you still see it with
Well, you still
adults too.
see it,
So
right.
with adults, where it's usually seen majority of times, it's those adults. It happens within the household. So a lot of us we really don't see what takes place when it comes to aggressive communication style. It's those individuals that see it in the house.
Yeah.
So you have spouses, you have
Parents,
husbands, parents
children.
who actually yell. They'll even physically hit you.
Yeah.
Because they'll say, no, it's either my way or it's
Or the road.
Or the road. You can't do this. This is as long as you live in this household, this is how you're supposed to follow rules. And you will see that they become very aggressive in that sense. So these are even adults have the same form of communication styles.
Yeah.
It's just that it's differently seen. So one example I can give you is that the way I see adults who have aggressive style of communication are those adults who come to us that have anger management issues. As you can tell, people that have anger management issues are those that are, it's something that you can see, something that you can hear, and then something that that it becomes physical. They eventually physically hit their partner as well, or their children, or vice versa. So remember, these are part of communication styles that we are seeing at the moment.
And I know I just got a message from one of the viewers indicating there is an echo, so we will ask the assistant to come up and help us with the echo. If the problem continues to occur, just let us know. Please send us a message, and we'll try to go ahead and take care of it right away.
Yes, definitely. Please do let us know if there's any form of problem
With sound.
with sound, audio, visual. We'll try to do our best to work on it. But we'll continue. We'll continue to speak as they'll work on
fixing the problem.
what the problem is.
So something else that I also want to point out, which you kind of mentioned already, is there's also this struggle with aggressive communicators between the balance of right and wrong. So people who usually have the aggressive communication style will always demand to be right, and will always tell others that they're wrong. And there's this feeling for aggressive communicators that I'll always get my way. It has to be my way, and if it's not my way, then I'm gonna make hell for you.
Yeah.
And nothing is my fault, everything is your fault.
Sure.
So we see a lot of these statements made by people who communicate very aggressively. And I mean, looking down at it, this could be a communication style again that could be learned from our environment. So when we feel like as kids we're growing up and we're either raised in a home where our parents are aggressive, we can learn that from them. Or if we're raised in a home where we feel like we don't have any control, we don't have a voice,
Yeah.
that can also push us to become aggressive communicators because
In the future.
yeah, in the future, because you know what, I didn't have control when I was growing up, and now I'm finally having control. I'm never gonna let go of this control, even if that means raising my voice, hitting, breaking things. Like, I need to be in control.
Definitely, and thank you for pointing that out. That's very important, and it is a learned behavior, brothers and sisters. So the way you have, your communication style is because there's somebody close to you, that has similar style, that that their form of communication has worked for them, and then you want to do the same, and you want to be able to use it the same way, with your own family, with your own friends, with your own children, and that's usually pretty common about that.
And what we see with aggressive communicators too is they tend to fail to listen. So I know Oli John mentioned that earlier today, that one of the key aspects of communication is the ability to listen to someone and actually hear what they're saying. And I think as individuals growing up, we don't really learn that skill. I think it's something that we just have, like the ability to hear things. But what we mean by listening and hearing is being able to kind of pause when we talk to someone and truly listen to them and process what they're saying, and then checking in with that individual and saying, like, this is what I heard you say, am I getting this right?
Sure.
Instead of creating our own assumptions about what they were saying. And so what we see with aggressive communicators is they don't do that. There's this like inability to listen and process accurately. They go from listening to responding.
Sure.
So
They
there's
do.
yeah,
They definitely do. So without even listening, they'll automatically have an answer
an answer.
because they don't want to listen, or they haven't learned ways to listen.
And I think what they do listen to is their own inner voice, and we see this a
Sure.
lot with couples when they're having conflicts. Is like if I use Willie myself as an example, I might say something to Willie, and if Willie has a very aggressive communication style, instead of being able to understand what I'm saying and kind of say back to me or apologize or hear me out, if he's an aggressive communicator, what he's going to do is he's going to listen to his own internal voice as I'm talking to him and then cut me off and express what he's saying.
Okay.
Right.
Definitely.
And so that's what we see with aggressive communicators is they're constantly listening to their own answers within their own head of, okay, he said this or she said this is how I'm going to respond to it. But they never take the moment to say, hey, hold on, let me slow down. Let me take this internal voice out of me and really truly listen with my whole heart and mind and ears to this other individual.
Absolutely. And as we talked about aggressive, passive behavior, communication styles, we talked about now aggressive behavioral style. Now we're going to go and change our shift to passive aggressive styles.
Sure.
So passive aggressive communication styles, users appear passive on the surface, but within he or she may feel powerless or struck, where they feel resentment, which leads. So the way passive aggressive is that you might feel that you're feeling angry. You feel anger, but on the outside you feel that you're okay, but deep inside you don't feel good. So in that sense, an example can be like someone can come and say, that's fine with me, but don't be surprised if someone else gets mean with you.
Yeah.
You know?
And so I think this is a good example of something you mentioned earlier, which was with passive-aggressive individuals. Thank you for turning that out. That was so distracting.
Hold on, I've turned it back on.
Sorry, we're having some technical issues, and we have a TV set in front of us so we can see our own reflection.
That's what the TV is showing. It
Yeah.
should be fine. It should be fine.
So, something that you mentioned earlier today. Oh, we have an echo here.
There you go.
So something that you mentioned earlier today was with passive aggressive folks, what we see is there's a lot of like body language that shows the aggression, right? So they might not say something, but you can tell by their body language that they're really upset. So something that you mentioned earlier today was, they might roll their eyes, right?
Yeah.
They might huff and puff like,
Or they mutter to themselves. They'll say things to
say
themselves.
under their breath.
Yeah, without confronting the issue or the person itself.
Right.
Yeah.
You can also see them like tapping their fingers or their pencils or their feet. So you'll see by their body, by their body language, that they're really irritated and annoyed. And so that's even worse. I think that's one of the worst communication styles because a part of you wants to say something, but a part of you doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
And I think you say a lot of things that are very critical and, almost like you're being very criticizing of individuals. And having this very sarcastic tone to everything you're doing, right? Like you gave a really good example earlier, which was like, that's fine with me, but don't be surprised if somebody else gets mad,
Yeah.
right? So there's this like sarcasm to what they say. Or they'll say things like, like, yes, everything has to be your way, or everything has to be this way. And so there's a lot of resentment. Again, we hear that
Sure.
word so many times today. There's constant resentment in those treatments.
Yeah, definitely. Then again, passive aggressive, like we said, people mutter, not just that, but they have difficulty acknowledging their own anger at times. And by, like you said, they use facial expression in order to express themselves without saying anything to you directly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what happens.
What do you think causes the passive aggressive communication style? I know we've talked about environment quite a lot today.
Repeat again.
What do you think causes the passive aggressive?
So passive aggressive. So a lot of things that ends up happening is with passive aggressive is that it's something that you can learn. From a very young age, where if you haven't been taught to express your thoughts or your feelings in a very healthy
Yeah.
way possible, you've always been told like, shh, be quiet, or it's something that you learned, like environmentally within the household, where you would see, your parent, your sibling doing something, or they were someone who had a passive aggressive communication style, where somebody had said something to them and then they backbited it.
Yeah.
Did some backbiting, or they would tell them what the issue was. They were going off in a tangent, or they were talking very negatively to
Yeah.
you about the individual, but they couldn't say it to them. You learn those things, and
Yeah.
then that's what you end up doing too. For you, it becomes normalized. So
Right.
when when you're by yourself, when somebody tells you something, you either internalize it or
Yeah.
you share it with somebody else and say, "Oh, did you see that?"
Yeah. And so the sad part about, the passive aggressive communication style is that most of the time these individuals who have this communication style are very aware of the emotions that they have within themselves and the things that they want to express, right?
Yeah.
But they have a really difficult time expressing them.
Sure.
And so I think I almost see passive aggressive folks who, use that communication style as their walls. Like they're almost trying to put up walls in front of their loved ones to protect themselves. So they're making these sarcastic comments, these critical comments to test others to see, do they really need me? Do they really love me? How far can I push them? Will they come and follow me after I make this comment?
Definitely.
And so we see that a lot in these kind of dynamics. It's almost a test.
Definitely. And another example can be, for instance, someone can say, "Sure, we can do this your way,"
Yeah.
but then deep inside they'll mutter to themselves. They'll say, "Oh, that's stupid."
Yeah, or actually most of the time they'll say it out loud, like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, sure, we can do it your way," like, because that's always works,
Yeah,
right?
like that always works.
So they'll do that and like almost put you down.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So now we have the last form of communication style we'll touch bases on. But before we do that, we'll go ahead and go on a quick break.
Oh,
we
maybe
got a
not.
caller.
We have a phone call.
Okay, so if you want to grab that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum. First of all, welcome back.
Assalamualaikum.
We're missed
Thank
very
you.
much, and I'm glad you had a good trip.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much.
How are you?
Yes, thank you. And I was going to add something that we have to emphasize, and this problem that you're talking about is, I can even say it, I hope it's not too strong to say, it's a disease.
Yeah.
It's mental or social disease, and need to seek help for it. There are professionals that can help. This is one thing that is in our society is missing, that people does not know that there are help for these kind of problems. If somebody comes and complains to the parent that my spouse is doing that, be it a woman or a man, we advise them to be patient. That's not a good advice.
Yeah.
We need to talk to the person when they're calm that this is a problem.
Yeah.
We need to tell him that this is a problem, it's not their fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is also the same as stomach acid, fatty liver. It not only affects you, it affects generation.
Yeah.
Your kids, your children will be affected by that. Not only that you don't have a happy life right now, that you can get help and you can solve this problem. If we can emphasize on this one, that this is a problem and there's a solution for it.
Definitely.
Definitely.
They don't have to suffer for the rest of their life.
Perfect.
Thank you very much for
Thank
my
you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the call. It's a very good question. You can go ahead, Kate.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
It's kind of nice because I actually think I pointed this out to you this morning.
You did.
We had a little disagreement about this topic actually this morning.
We did, and I think thank you so much for the sister to give us the call and shed some light on the importance of how this becomes a disease eventually,
Yeah.
right? Because it's even if it's a problem, like she used the example of a human body. If there's
Yeah.
a problem in the liver, everything will spread to the whole body, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, same thing. If a child learns this or learns these kind of behaviors, it can become a problem. It can become problematic as they get older.
Yeah.
So,
And I really
which is very
like
good.
what she pointed out, which is kind of what we were discussing earlier today before the show, which was how does our environment react to when we're engaging in some of these communication styles that
Yeah.
are not, as healthy for us, and not just us, but those who love us and who we're communicating with. And I know something that I was sharing with Willie John was, I think, like in my opinion, parents are the number one people who either support this communication style or do not support this communication style, right?
Yeah.
And so I really like what our caller said, which is we need somebody who can put these people in check and say, you know what, this isn't normal and you shouldn't be patient. Because I think in our society, in our community, we hear that a lot of, it's okay, like, this is normal. You just have to be patient. Just pray about it. It's going to be okay. Like, she's just like that or he's just like that. And we're normalizing it. But the reality is we shouldn't be doing that. We should be indicating, like, hey, this isn't healthy for your health. This isn't healthy for your relationship. And it's not okay for this individual to talk to you in this certain way. How about, we step in and, like, talk to our child and assist her or him, or how about you guys go and seek help,
Definitely.
right? Because I think I really love what she said, which is we're constantly normalizing these communication styles and telling people to be patient, and I think we're making things worse for them when we're saying be patient. Something that you and I see in our own offices is couples will come to us 6 years into their relationship, 12 years into their marriage, indicating we have problems.
Yeah.
And so our question's always like, internally we're always like, had you come when these problems had started, you wouldn't continue having these problems 6 years, 12 years later.
Yeah.
But why did they come so much later? Because people are telling them to be patient.
Sure. These are important factors. If you're not able to diagnose the problem, or let's say not diagnose, if you're not able to treat the problem or take initiative in working with that and helping the process in a very earlier stage, that diagnosis will eventually spread and there would be no treatment of it, or it'll be too late, right? And that's just common sense, and that's something that a lot of people fail to neglect. So that's why the moment you diagnose something, please remember there's always a treatment or there's a plan to fixing the problem.
And I think the other aspect of it is we have to think about where these words come from of be patient, right?
Yeah.
Like when I hear the word be patient, automatically I think of the Quran, I think of Islam, I think of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the whole concept of be patient, show patience, let hardships pass by, things will get better. And so I think sometimes we may use religion to tell people to just put up with things. But I think sometimes we have to take a step back and analyze, like, being patient in the situation, is it going to improve things?
Sure.
Is it going to make things worse? Because sometimes you don't need to be patient in all situations, because it can, like a
Absolutely.
disease, it will grow.
You really don't, because you have to take actions. Sometimes you would have to take action of certain situations. So for that, patient is good, but at the same time, you need to implement
Yeah.
on certain actions as well.
Yeah.
So before we go any further, I think what we will do is we'll go on a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the last stages of communication style that we would suggest that works very best for any person.
Sure.
So please stay tuned with us.
And what we would like to show you actually is one of our favorite parts from our trip. I think we have so many favorite parts,
Yeah.
but I think this was our favorite part of the first section of our trip, so
Yeah.
the first quarter. And what we're going to show you is actually a recitation of the Blue Mosque in Turkey. On our first night in Turkey, we actually landed there so late that we were able to go straight to the mosque for Fajr. And after our Fajr prayer, the imam there was actually, a very well-known imam who started reciting and doing knots. And we automatically fell in love, with his recitation, and that motivated us to come every single morning, not just for prayer, but just to sit and listen to him, because it created such a sense of relaxation within us, and you would forget all of your stress.
Yes. So he would give a khatra, and then he would recite the Quran, and then he will, lead the prayer, and then after that he would sit, and then he would do a qiraat. And then, as we know, Turkey is, majority of the country. They have a form of Sufism involved in it, where they do, as we say, Nat for Afghans that know about it. It's such beautifully done. So we want to go ahead and display the same Qari that actually leads the prayer is on the video that I chosen. But once we're done, I have compiled a video, Lamajan and I, we worked on back when we went. So give us at least a week to two or so. Once we do finish that, and we'll go ahead and play it for all of our viewers. But here, we're going to go on a break, see how beautiful his voice this Qari has, and then when we come back, we'll finish our discussion, inshallah.
See you guys soon.
كل ما شاء الله أحسنت أحسنت.
سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Welcome back, dear brothers and sisters. Hope you guys are doing well. And as we were back from our break, you guys were able to see, the recitation of the Qari from the Blue Mosque. It was just, again, I can't really express the feelings,
And I feel
watching
like
it
even
through the
this
video.
Yeah, even this video doesn't do it justice, because when you're
It
there
doesn't.
alive, you feel it radiate through you.
Definitely.
So I think being there and listening to it, I think I actually, for the first time, understood the essence of Sufism,
Yeah, it's
and what they
beautiful.
mean by even the way they worship and the way they pray. Like, you truly do feel it through you.
Yeah, and in all reality, it's a different form of expression. How do people express their thoughts and feelings, for the beautiful Deen, and then it was just a different taste and a different way of understanding it, which was beautiful. I mean, again, the video can do just. You really have to go there to be able
To
to experience it. That's
Yeah.
basically simple answer to that.
So today's topic was focused on the communication styles that we use in our day-to-day lives, and how, as humans, we all have different type of communication styles. This also doesn't mean that the communication style that you were raised with, that you use as a teenager, as a kid, or a young adolescent, is the same kind of communication style that you continue showing and communicating throughout your whole life. Your communication style can change, and most of the time it does change. So we already have talked about 3 different types of communication styles, which consist of passive aggressive and passive aggressive. And so the 4th communication style that we want to go ahead and address today is the assertive communication
Yes.
style. And so I'll let you go ahead and take over for that one.
Sure. So again, when we talk about assertive communication style, it's something that that's somebody that can express their own needs, desires, ideas, and feelings, while also considering the needs of others.
Yeah.
Just to simply put that into words, it's basically me telling you guys that whatever you tell me, or let's say, for instance, whatever I say, I'm trying to express myself in the most healthiest way possible, and I can talk to you guys about my thoughts, feelings, emotions, and then at the same time, I'm able to hear back,
Yeah.
what you guys tell me.
Right, so it's like a give and take, right? That's kind of equal in a form, but it's also the key component to the assertive communication style is there's a lot of respect.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of respect for the other person's opinions and feelings and thoughts, as well as there's no blaming language. So somebody who communicates in an assertive way will usually use I statements. And I statements consist of a language that indicates that, for example, I feel this way, I'm impacted by these actions in this sort of way. So you really own up your own self and your own emotions, instead of using blaming language like
Definitely.
you did this because of you. And so that is one of the biggest differences, is it shows ownership of your own emotions without blaming someone else, while at the same time maintaining a lot of respect for the other individual. And this can look like, I respect you, but we have differing opinions. It's okay for both of our opinions to exist, even if they're different. I respect the rights of others. I respect what you're saying. It's okay for us both to express ourselves in, our own way. So
Definitely.
what we see with assertive communicators is 2 truths can coexist.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
your truth and my truth, as different as they both are, can actually coexist. And I would be okay with that.
Absolutely. And it's very important to become an assertive communicator.
Yeah.
As said earlier, right? Knowing and understanding how others communicate can be a key to getting your own message across, no matter what happens, right? If you're able to listen to others, they're also willing to listen to you, right?
Yes.
Like you said, it's a give and take.
Yeah.
It can't be one way. I know usually certain individuals they like to give orders, or they like to express their thoughts and feelings, but they don't like to hear back others.
And what
That's
they
where the problem
cause,
occurs.
Yeah, and when you just talk and talk and talk without creating an opportunity for the other person to, express themselves, you burn out that individual. That individual either, kind of phases out at some point and is like starting to think about something else and not listening to you anymore. Or that person will, think to themselves like, oh my God, why did I come here? Why am I sitting with this person?
Definitely.
I'm never going to do this again, right?
Definitely.
So you're burning out that other individual by not creating an opportunity for that person to also have some kind of ownership in the conversation.
Definitely, and it's also important that we realize, what are key elements to becoming an assertive communicator.
Yeah.
And like Lumba John stated, right, one of the things that we discussed and we talked about was using the I statement. I am responsible for my own thoughts.
Yeah.
I realized that what I did was wrong. I accept, or I respect the rights of others.
Right.
These are important things, like you said. When you use the I statement, you're taking responsibility and ownership and telling others that you are acknowledging the fact that that you're taking responsibility.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we also need to learn to become assertive communicators is the ability to make eye contact when we're talking to one another. Now, we also have to take into considerations that some cultures actually will see that as disrespect. So always be aware of the kind of culture you are within. So if you are communicating with someone from an Asian, culture where, direct eye contact is disrespectful, take that into consideration. That might not mean that they're being passive. That just might mean part of their culture is not having direct eye contact. But if you are in a culture where eye contact, body language is very important, then yes, do it, because assertive communication does consist of being able to look at someone into their eyes and express how you feel very confidently. So not feeling like, should I say this? Should I not say this? I'm nervous about this. It's taking ownership and looking at someone saying,
Definitely.
this is how I feel. This is how I feel impacted. This is what my wishes are. And then having the ability to, learn to say no. Hey, can you do this for me? I need you to do this favor for me. No, I'm not able to do it. I don't have the time. And that's something that we see that passive communicators don't have the ability to do. If somebody asks them, can you go shopping on my behalf, and they don't have the time, they don't have the money, they don't have the ability, instead of saying, no, I can't, they'll say, okay, I'll do it, right?
Yeah.
So as an assertive communicator, you need to learn how to say no. And this is something I work with on a lot, actually, with my clients who have anxiety. So individuals who usually have a very high, level of anxiety, or social anxiety especially, what you see with them is they tend to be very passive, and they have a really hard time being assertive. And there's this fear of, being criticized. So I would rather be passive and pretend that I don't exist so people don't notice me, so I don't get criticized. Because if I speak up and I use my voice, I'm afraid that's going to create conflict, and that's going to create a situation where I'm going to get criticized.
Sure.
Right.
Those are true. And then, like you said again, being able to express your voice or your needs or your desire is through doing it confidently. Because if you don't, that means that there's a challenging issue that will state for yourself and for your partner. That means that from a very earlier on stages of your relationship or your upbringing, you didn't have a voice, or you didn't have a voice in the very beginning. Or what ended up happening was that you did have a voice, but what you ended up doing is, in order to get yourself out of conflict, or try to stay away from conflict, you went ahead and you kind of shut down your voice in these scenarios and suggestions as well.
So you actually have a comment from one of our favorite viewers.
Yes.
And I want to make sure that we go ahead and answer his questions. So again, Mr. Sean Fazili, thank you for watching this. We really
Assalamualaikum.
appreciate your ongoing support. And so Mr. Fazili is asking, how do you communicate with someone who talks bad about others?
Want to tackle that?
So how do you communicate with someone who talks about bad things about others? One way I would tackle it is I would just
Don't talk to them. End of story. That's what you do. I'm joking.
If life was only that easy, right?
Yeah.
I would actually just point out to them the impact of their behavior, right? There's something that, First show John and I talked about on our show a couple months back, and it's kind of the purpose of gossip. Why do people gossip? Why
Yeah.
do they say bad things? And it's for the purpose of gaining attention, right? They like that attention. They like having that power, being able to spread rumors and things that they believe is true knowledge. But it's always important to ask the three questions. Is it true? Is it necessary to be
Definitely.
said? And is it kind, right? And so I think whenever you're communicating with someone who's saying bad things about others, it's really important to stop it right there and there and just, tell the person, like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not okay with this. For me, this is so un-Islamic. Like, we should be building one another up instead of, breaking each other down. Because,
Dehumanizing and
yeah,
talking down upon you.
how would you feel if, I went and I said bad things about you behind your back? Or somebody else came to me and did the same thing you're doing and said something bad about you, So really kind of taking what's happening in that moment and making it very personal for that individual to help them understand the impact of their actions.
Definitely. And then the other thing is that when somebody comes to you and backbites, basically, that's what they're
About
doing.
someone else, yeah.
About somebody else, you as a Muslim, as a brother, or a sister, need to tell the individual and you need to shut them down yourself. Because if you allow others to talk downly upon others, you're also welcoming those fitnas into your own life. So the best thing is you got to create that boundary line and tell them, thank you for your, for what you're telling me. But at the same time, you got to be the person to help them understand or help them realize that if you create this, this line or this respect for the other person, then that person will realize that, this person is very serious about me not talking down upon others. It basically shows character. It basically shows that you yourself, you have a character, and later in life or later next time when they see you, they won't go ahead and they'll talk down upon others, or they'll think twice about that as well.
And I like what you're mentioning, because that is a part of assertive communication, of being able to, create that boundary with that individual. Because that's step number one, and most people don't feel comfortable, right? Because that creates conflict for someone to say, like, hey, there's a boundary. But for you to be able to speak up and say, hey, that might be your opinion, this is what you might think, but I don't agree with you. That's your opinion. Can you keep it to yourself, right? That is assertive communication, and that's a kind of communication style that we need to get more familiar with and be able to engage in, because we need to be able to call out people who are, backbiting and are saying negative things.
And in return, if the person, I wouldn't be surprised if the person just continuously talk down upon that individual, or looks at you and says, because that individual could be a passive aggressive communicator, or a aggressive communicator who eventually will just even brush you off and says whatever. That happens. That's normal. Again, people are different. People have different form of communication styles. We're just saying that if you're coming across somebody who is passive aggressive or aggressive, if they don't hear what you're saying as a assertive communicator, that that becomes out of your hands. You're able to speak your thoughts. You're able to share your thoughts with them. But if they can't respect your thoughts or what you're saying to them, then that means that over here, that there shows that person, you guys are just two different people. And usually from here, it's your decision on if you really want to allow this kind of individual or this group of individuals to be within your own life circle.
And that's something we always tend to talk about.
That's up to you,
Yeah, and that's something that we always tend to talk about, which is, why do people feel comfortable talking to you or saying these things to you, right? They're always testing their limits. Let me say this thing about this individual and see how this person reacts to. Will they join me in this gossip, or are they going to shut me down? So there's a reason why this individual feels comfortable to backbite about someone else with you. And so you need to realize, what have your actions been to cause this person to feel so comfortable, and recognize that and create that boundary and say, thank you so much for feeling so comfortable expressing yourself, but I am not comfortable engaging in this conversation, and I'm not going to engage in this conversation with you. So we have another.
So yes, Brother Sean has another question. Brother Sean, if you can, try to call too. I think you have great questions and
we would
great
love
suggestions.
To hear your voice.
We do want to hear your voice if you can. Please don't be shy. And then thank you for the other question as well. So the other question says, can you explain about people, kids that have ADD? They can't
They
can't
talk
stop.
nonstop.
Yeah, they just can't. They stop. They don't talk. They're constantly talking nonstop.
Right.
And so, what's the remedy for that?
What do you think?
Some thoughts. Can you put us in trouble if we don't know how to be silent? Okay, that's true. So
Well,
yeah.
I think, and sorry for cutting
Go,
you
go.
off, but I think number one is, okay, so like since we started off talking about adults who backbite,
Yeah.
just recognizing the difference between a child and an adult, right? Because when you see the difference between the
Yeah.
two, mentally, logically, you understand like this is a child, this is a child who, is innocent, and in their innocence, they're making mistakes, they're not aware of what they're saying fully, right?
Definitely.
But this is an adult who's making these statements, and we can't really compare them and treat them the same way. And especially when that child has ADD, because like Mr. Fresley indicated, sometimes, most of the times, kids who have ADD, it's uncontrollable. Their
That's
body movement is uncontrollable. Their thoughts are uncontrollable.
Yeah.
Something that we may experience somebody just talking to us, and we can focus on what they're saying and nothing else. Kids who have ADD will listen to what you said. We'll hear the bus across
bus
two
across the
streets.
street.
We'll hear the phone call. Like, so much is going on
Let's
at
hope
the
that's
same
Brother
time.
Sean.
Might be.
Let's pick it up.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
Good, good, good. Who are we speaking to?
You are speaking to Abdullah. I'm calling from Canada.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother
Assalamu alaikum.
Abdullah. How is everything? How's family?
Alhamdulillah, everyone's fine. How about yours?
Alhamdulillah, doing well, doing well. Thank you for your call.
No problem. I'm sorry, I just tuned in. What's the show today about?
So the show today is pertaining to communication styles. So we went over all four types of communication style. We discussed about what was it called? We talked about passive communication style, aggressive communication style, passive aggressive, and then now we're at assertive communication style.
Oh, okay. Okay, so okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sure.
So even if you wanted to catch our show, usually it plays on on TV around 6 p.m. But also if you follow us on Facebook, you can catch the
On
whole
Sadai
program
Haq.
on Sadai Haq, or under
Yeah.
our name.
Okay.
Yeah. So did you have a questions or any thoughts or suggestions? So we were basically talking about how there are people that have a very passive form of communication style, people that are very aggressive in terms of communicating. They're either physically, emotionally,
Verbally.
or mentally very intimidating. They like to intimidate
Yeah.
others, their family members. And then you have those that are passive aggressive, where they get angry at others, but then they'll say things like
Sarcastic comments.
sarcastic comment, right? Like, sure, we can do this your way, but deep inside, what they'll tell themselves is like, that's stupid. Like, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then lastly,
I honestly...
yeah.
Oh, sorry to cut you off.
No, go.
Honestly, I think communication is very important, not just verbally, but also like body language is also very plays a very important role in how you communicate with others. Because there's some people, you tell them to do something, they say they'll do it, but you could tell by their body language that they don't want to do what you ask them to do. So it's like they forcefully do it, and not only does it bother you, but it also like bothers those around you, because this person isn't really passionate about what you want them to do.
And so we would actually call that kind of communication style passive communication style, because they're unable to really communicate to you what they're truly feeling, right?
Yeah.
So you might be saying something and they're going along with it, but like you said, their body language is showing you like, oh, this person doesn't agree with me at all.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your feedback. We
No
appreciate
problem.
that.
I just had another question.
Sure, go ahead.
What time does your show start every Sunday, like the live time?
So it's live Pacific time at 11 a.m. every Sunday.
11 to
Okay, 11 a.m. Pacific time.
yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
11 to
That's correct?
12:30. It's an hour and a half.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for watching us. We appreciate it.
You too. Okay. Bye-bye. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
Walaikum
salam.
salam. So I think we also have another caller here. So let me put this on speaker. Speaker. Hello?
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamualaikum, everybody.
Bale, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum salam. I saw your show today. today, and I had a question in regards to the communication skills.
Yes.
I did want to say thank you so much for bringing this up, because I think we have a lot to learn on the different styles of communication. So how would you guys recommend for an individual that's receiving bully treatment in society? How would you recommend them to communicate to either their bullies or to the society that they're surrounded by?
Sure, we can answer that question. Anything else, or that's all?
That's the only one. And
Oh.
then the next question is going to be also family.
Sure.
Like, what if you have family members that are bullies? And of course, we can't avoid family members. They exist, and we can't ever avoid them. They're going to always be there. How do we communicate constructively so that it doesn't affect us, but it also doesn't sever ties with other family members that may be connected or involved somehow?
Sure.
Sure.
We'll try to answer it to our best of abilities. Thank you for the
Perfect.
call.
Thank you.
Assalamu
Thank
alaikum.
you. Assalamu
Like I
alaikum.
said.
Okay. So, so discussing. So I'll go ahead and maybe talk about the first part of it.
Okay.
Is how do you divert and how do you tackle challenges pertaining to bullying? That's right. Kids who go through, who are in school and they see that they're being bullied on a day-to-day basis, and how can they confront bullies? So number one, I always tell the individuals that are always being bullied, is always giving the other side of the story. Why do people become bullies, first and foremost? Let me tell you the story of that. Reason why a person is bullying you, because they are twice or are in more pain. They're going through difficulties, challenges within their own household and within their own environment, or they're also being bullied, from their family member, their parents, people in their household. So in order for them to express their thoughts and feelings and be able to feel better, they have to bully. So they can't do it verbally, right? So what ends up happening is that when you can't verbally be able to express your thoughts and feelings to others or yourself, you eventually take action, via means of physical or emotional abuse. So if a person is bullying you, you have to understand that that person at that current moment, their parents are not having they don't probably might not have a good relationship in the household. The parents are constantly fighting amongst each other. You have a sibling always abusing another sibling. So there's different variations to this. But in order to help the individual that's being bullied, so there could be certain things, right? Number one, that child probably doesn't have the self-esteem to talk to the bully because he's afraid that he or she might get bullied again. So what that individual can do is that we always suggest that go and tell a safe adult. Talk to somebody within, somebody that you trust in the school, the teachers or the principals or even your parents. Because in the beginning stages of you being bullied, number one, understand that you're being bullied. Number two, tell a safe adult and let them know, because eventually what needs to be done here is that you need to be able to support these children. That's what it is. Before they can even go on offensive mode and helping them and building their self-esteem, that will take time. And that does take time. You have to help those individuals as well and telling them that, listen, that guy's a bully. And even if you're a bully, you can always, what I've been taught, and what else that works is that the moment a bully is trying to bully you, or even if they try to approach you, you can yell fully. You can yell. Before they even get to you, you can just say, stop, right there. Like, just say it out loud and they'll freeze. They'll go in a state of shock and they'll say, oh wow, like this has never happened before. Why is this person yelling at me? So the moment you do that, they'll freeze. So you can, from a very loud, just very loudly, make sure they're at a distance, just yell, stop, like that. Just do that. And that will reinforce them and their body to biologically freeze because they've never had somebody tell them to stop or you to stop. And that does help. That does help.
So something that I want to go ahead and share, in regards to what you said is definitely, get an adult involved when you are being bullied, whether it's a parent or, a school counselor or a teacher. But something else that I have noticed is, what is a bully's purpose, right? A bully's purpose is to gain attention, to seem like the funny kid in the crowd, to be the popular kid, and they always come back to bully you more and more and more because they get a reaction out of you,
Sure.
right? The kind of reaction that makes them feel powerful and in
Powerful, yeah.
control. And so something that really, really works is not reacting to the things that they're saying and actually complimenting the bully when they're bullying you. So it could be, not giving them that satisfaction. You're ugly. Thank you. Your clothes are ugly. Okay, thanks for sharing that with me. Whatever negative thing they're saying, complimenting them for either making that comment or complimenting them for a future they have. Because after a certain point, what else are they going to say to a compliment, right? They're going to get bored and they're going to get exhausted and tired and just feel like, okay, like this isn't working. I don't have any control. And, I'm not getting that satisfaction anymore. And we've seen so many videos on these. So if you are being bullied, I would actually even have you go ahead and Google this and YouTube it and watch videos of assertive communication complimenting the bully when you are being bullied, because it tends to work. Whenever I work with my kids, this is a tactic I use, and eventually they're not bullied because the bully gets tired. They don't enjoy it anymore, because every time they try to make some kind of comment, the person's like, oh, okay, like that's great, you're so smart, thank you for sharing that with me, and there's a bit of sarcasm, but I'm like, dude, very genuine, because eventually they're gonna be like, oh my god, he's complimenting me, how do I make fun of him now?
So you have to be aware of it, when the individual is being bullied, and it's vice versa. You can use different variations and different tactics, because sometimes one might not work and the other might work. So be mindful that there are solutions to it. And it does work. And it does work.
Now, for the second question, which focused on, what if you're being bullied within your own family? If there's a family member, whether it's a sister, an aunt, a mother, or father, who's bullying you and making maybe statements to you that are putting you down, how do we tackle that? My thing has always been, I'm very big on boundaries and having boundaries. So one, expressing yourself to that individual in a private matter and indicating how they're making you feel. If you feel like that person is not taking you, respectfully, and is not, understanding your needs and understanding how they're impacting you, setting boundaries. Okay, well, if this is how you're going to continue treating me, instead of seeing me every day, you might see, or like, especially if this is like when I have clients who have like caregivers who live in a different state, and every time the caregiver calls the child and they're constantly criticizing them, like, why did you do this? You're terrible. You're this, you're this, you're this, you're this. I say, set up a boundary. Okay, mom. Okay, dad. Like, I love you. How was your day? But the moment they start criticizing you, you share with them, okay, if you continue criticizing me, I'm going to hang up. And you create a boundary that teaches the other person, like, you need to have your limits and you need to respect my boundaries, because if you don't, then you might not be able to talk to me on the phone until you respect me. Because that's what Islam teaches us, right? We need to treat each other with kindness and pause conversations when we know kindness will not occur until we give it another chance and see, hey, is that person taking advantage of that opportunity and now acting in a kind way?
Definitely. And as we stated earlier, everybody has a different form of communication styles, even when it comes to parents. So it's important to acknowledge and let the parents know, like, listen, hey, mom and dad, just let's talk about how you're approaching, or when you say certain things, it's not very appealing to me, and it's okay, because your parents will get you. It's not like your parents will not get you, right? Yes, very slightly, there are certain parents that don't have the capacity to be able to understand the different form of communication styles, where for them it's gray and, black and white. So they don't realize that there's other forms of communication styles, because they've learned it previously from their community or from their family members. And it's important to have those conversations, because once they realize that, my child is different now. And one thing that parents don't, certain parents don't realize, or when they start, when the child is getting older, they don't, they'll start joking, and those jokes become kind of bullying for the child as they get older. Like, hey, this is starting to become annoying. It's just starting to, it seems like my parents are bullying me. You have to let them know, because for your parents, even subconsciously, for them, you'll always be their little kid, or they'll try to bully you without not even knowing that they're bullying you. For them, it's a part of the culture. Oh no, this is like, what are you talking about? We do this all the time growing up. Nobody did this. Nobody felt this way. Nobody felt down. Nobody felt like we were being bullied. So you have to remember those certain situations too within parents as well.
And I think, it's also looking at both sides too, because like Willie John expressed, there are parents who, conduct themselves in that way. But then we also have a set of parents who have their own mental illnesses, right? Whether it's depression, whether it's trauma from, back home and war and all the things that have occurred, or whether it's something completely else.
Yeah.
But we have parents who, like Willie John described, will use humor and like jokes as a method of bullying, don't see it as a big deal. And then we have parents that I see a lot with my own clients who, do have their own mental health problems, whether it's, trauma that they faced or have been abused by spouses or things like that. And they truly do not, what they say they mean, and they do not ask for forgiveness. So I've had clients who come to me and tell me that, like, my father, my mother will call me and they will curse me out.
Yeah.
My mother will put me down. My mother will do this. My father will do this. And we have to, these are one of those examples, those moments where we can't say, just be patient and these are your parents and it's okay. Because no, right? Like, we have to be able to see the difference and know the limits and say, okay, when is it too much?
Yeah.
And then when you know that person, like, if in one example, like your example, the parents are understanding and are willing to sit down and talk and understand. But if those parents are not, and they're like, nope, you're wrong, I don't want to hear you, da 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 da, I think as humans, we have to take the step and say, okay, this isn't healthy for me. I need to figure out a way, whether it's taking my family and myself into therapy and having a family session, or creating a boundary that says, hey, mom and dad, these are the topics I want to talk to you guys about. These are the topics that are off limits. Let's not talk about them because every time it comes up, we have arguments. Then creating that list, and whenever parents, or not even parents, your siblings, your aunts, your grandparents, whoever in your life, whenever they go into those topics, just saying, hey, just want to remind you, we promised we wouldn't talk about this. And if they continue, you just remove yourself from that situation, because you teach that person, hey, we agreed on this. I'm showing you respect by walking away from this conversation. I'm showing myself respect by walking away from this conversation.
Definitely.
Because sometimes, like I said, people have mental illnesses we're not aware of. And it's upon us to say, hey, is my soul, is my body, is my health being impacted by their actions? And if I don't stand up for myself and walk away, who will?
Definitely. And you know that you're going to be in the same household, so it's not like I'm just going to grab my stuff and run away.
And this is a forever, yeah.
This is a forever relationship. But how do you, proceed that relationship? Things do change with time. Don't expect having one conversation with your surrounding or somebody within the household and thinking that things are getting better. No, it takes time. So also, you got to also have some form of patience, but also give it time. Even the easiest way, like Lamba John said, you can always go and consult with your, if you, let's say if it's one of your parents or your brothers, or somebody that has influence over somebody within the household. You can always go and talk to the person who actually does listen to you and understands you, and let them know, like uncle or an aunt, and say, hey, can you please talk to my brother? Can you talk to my mom? They're bullying me in this way. I know they're doing it in a loving way, but for me, it's starting to bug me. And I'm 100% time sure they will go and they'll talk to to your parents or your sibling, and that's okay. Try to do that, because again, this is a never-ending relationship. You gotta have patience. Sometimes parents they'll say things, either they're raised in a certain way, either like Lumbo John stated that they might have some form of mental health challenge, where they're not even realizing that they're causing or they're saying something that is hurting you. So please realize that. Let somebody in the household know, same way. And I'm sure they can be of an assistance in that sense.
And always seek help, whether it's within the home or outside the home.
Definitely.
Sometimes if we get burned out, then, who's going to take care of us? What's going to happen to us? So we always should seek help when we feel frustrated or feel like, I've tried to use all the tactics that are, at the edge of my hands and there's nothing else. Instead of just waiting and allowing the situation to get worse and worse and worse, try to go outside of your resources, which is within your home or your community, and seek other help, because it is available.
Definitely. And I think we also have another question by Brother Sean. He stated, we talk to ourselves silently, nonstop. Is this a problem human mind has taken over time? Nobody knows how to stop thinking.
Mm-hmm. Why do we believe a thought or thoughts real? Why is it hard to change our negative thoughts when it's triggered? And where do the emotions come? So I always when I work with my clients, I always tell them that, your mind constantly has thoughts. We constantly,
It never stops. It's like a motor, 24-hour
Yeah.
machine that keeps on rolling. And the importance is how are you able to realize that your mind is being, it's running, and how do you control it?
and I think the other aspect of it is being able to identify, and this is a skill that has to be learned,
Yeah.
being able to identify which thoughts are real, because we do have thoughts. We have millions and millions of thoughts throughout the day. And sometimes I think this is something you and I say, women tend to have more thoughts than men because, men are able to sometimes shut off their brain and not think about things. But we as women, we have so many wires
Constantly
going,
thinking of
yeah,
different things.
million things at the same time. So realizing, hey, let me check in with myself and not just fall into this thought I'm having, and doing that by saying, okay, I'm having this thought, it's coming up, it keeps coming up over and over and over. Let me do a check-in with myself. Is this thought a fact, or is this just a thought that's passing by in my brain? And so how do you do that? How you do it is you use kind of logic. You say, okay, if this thought is a fact, let me check in how I do that. Well, let me figure out the evidence that this thought is a fact. Okay, lines are yellow. Okay, are they yellow? Let me think about all the lines I've ever seen. Let me Google a picture. Oh, yeah, lines are yellow. Okay, this thought is a fact. So doing like a check with yourself, looking for the evidence behind the thoughts, because we tend to have a lot of thoughts, and a lot of them are at times very, very irrational. I know Mr. Fazali also talked about why do we get negative thoughts when we're triggered. And this is something called automatic negative thoughts. And it tends to happen whenever we're triggered or stressed. All the negative thoughts come up and we get overwhelmed by them, and we become very, very pessimistic. And I think that's just the way the human body is. Like, we over exaggerate things and we overreact. And the key is to get grounded in those moments and let ourselves know, by recognizing, okay, I'm having all these negative thoughts come and overwhelm me. Let me breathe in and out. Let me calm down, and let me respond to all these negative thoughts with a positive thought. And then I will be able to tell which ones are real and which ones are not.
Definitely. And just to piggyback on it, same way, you got to be able to recognize it. Even with men too, it's the same thing. We do have a lot of thoughts, and I think the way we function it too is, for us, it's more of like, thoughts, okay, let's push everything to the side.
It's like boxes.
We box everything. We push it. We push it to the side where we don't think about it, and we just focus on what's a task.
Yeah.
And that's what ends up happening with as far as I know, for me.
Women aren't like that. We have a bunch of wires constantly intersected.
So for me, I get a lot of thoughts. I think the ones that are more, I think whatever is coming up first, or whatever is priority for me in life, that I'll go ahead and interact with or come across. Let's say later today or tomorrow, then those thoughts will come. Anything that's a day or two, then I'll just kind of push it to the side and say, we can probably talk about it when it comes
Later.
But that's how it works. But just human brain works differently. Negative thoughts are, our negative thoughts are always there. Just a good example would be, we always talk and share, and I've asked this question primarily to a lot of people. I always tell them, so now a good example is, imagine, there's 10 things that you did in life, okay? Out of the 10 things, 9 of those situations, something was successful and you did good deeds, right? And then out of the 10 things, one thing that you did, was bad, what would stick out to that individual the most? Out of, those 10 things that you did, 9 things were good things and one thing was that bad thing. Everybody's answer, about over 90% of the time, so 95% of the times, I've gotten every single person telling me that it's the one bad thing would come, that would be the one thing that would come to my mind versus the good thing.
Well, and if you think about it, there's an anxiety piece attached to that even, right? Because as Mr. Fazali was talking about being triggered, when we're triggered, our anxiety spikes up like a rocket. And when we get anxious, we don't get anxious about the present moment and what's at hand. Our mind automatically goes to, oh my God, how is this going to impact my future? What's going to happen tomorrow? If I answer this way, how is that person going to respond back to me? Like, we're constantly thinking about what's going to happen in the future, and that creates stress for us, right? And then that creates negativity. We over exaggerate. We start having black and white thinking. So it's so important to catch ourselves in those moments and realize, okay, like I'm getting anxious. This is why all these negative thoughts are coming up. And so I need to slow myself down, do my breathing techniques, meditate, pray, relax, take a walk so I can kind of bring myself back to zero.
Yeah.
So we are up on time, and we kind of just want to wrap it up right now because we are past our program time by 3 minutes, and we like to end on time because we know your time is precious. And so today's topic focused again, kind of let's do a recap. Today's topic did focus on communication styles, and we talked about the 4 different types of communication styles, which were passive, aggressive, assertive, and passive aggressive.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of talked about the differences between all the 4 communication styles, gave some examples of them, did a little bit of role playing, talked about, you know, how do these communication styles develop, how the environment impacts these communication styles, and had the chance to share a little bit about our trip.
Yep. And I think one thing that we did miss out, which we will do is maybe next week we'll talk about it, is that we also wanted to divert into our topic of the 5 love languages. So what we'll do is maybe we can discuss that further our next show.
Next week, yeah.
Next week. So please stay tuned as we will compile our videos of our trip. We do want to encourage you guys to take a look at it and be empowered by what's out there for us Muslims, and it's also very important for the younger generation to take initiatives and go and do sightseeing, even if it means going to Saudi Arabia or Jerusalem. These are important places that we want you guys to understand. As I said earlier, people that are living, like Lambajan and I discussed, even people from Palestine are not allowed to go to the mosque in Jerusalem at Masjid al-Aqsa, even though they're 5 minutes away. It's like they get out of the house and it's right there in front of them, but they have no right to go. We as Muslims, as Americans, here, we can go there. So let not be discouraged by the fact that we see social media and people show killings, people are dying out there. It's true, it's a war zone. You can see it when you get there. There's guns everywhere, there's people everywhere, but we still want to be entitled, and we still want to be able to know that whatever takes place, that we know of our history, that we have history there. So my only suggestion and takeaway here would be, do what you can, try to visit these places.
Yeah. So we will see you guys again next Sunday, inshallah, at Pacific time, 11 a.m. So
Definitely.
we'll see you then.
We'll see you guys there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.